Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 15, talking about artwork from the early Bronze era. So we just looked at a work that comes from this object here, a lyre, an early type of stringed instrument. And you can see the panel in the front that has the registers that we were looking at earlier. And again, if we look at these shapes here, the bull head, these golden horns, we have the long wavy beard. So we see a lot of that during these early Mesopotamian works of art. Okay, so the lyre soundbox. And we were just looking at the front. It doesn't actually show the rest of the instrument, or you can actually see the strings. And we're going to take a look at this work here, the head of an Akkadian ruler, 2300 to 2200 BCE, made in bronze, about 12 inches. If you look at the design, Arcadia was a very powerful empire from this area. Look at the abstract pattern on the headband and how it is being used again in the back of the head. A lot of interesting textures happening with the hair of the beard. So if you can imagine, this was made, around 4,000 years ago. Humans at the time had a very complex vision in terms of what they can create. You're creating textures and patterns and designs, and you can probably guess this was a portrait of a king. But yes, highly designed, highly decorated, and again, the man with the long twisty beard. And now let's take a look at this here. Maybe some of you recognize this scene. The Great Pyramids of Giza. And so you're probably wondering, how does this all fit into art history? Well, if you were to think about these early civilizations, these early Mesopotamian works of art were influential in the Egyptian works of art. And so here are the Great Pyramids, and these are the main ones. There are 4 of them. Okay, so these were built as burial vaults for pharaohs or god kings, and that they were a type of tunnel-like system. So you can probably guess they would bury the dead here, the dead pharaohs, alongside their belongings. And so we would ask ourselves, why would they do that? Why would they do things like mummification, which is something we're going to talk about in just a moment? Why would they bury their riches along with them when they died? And so we're going to talk a little bit about the ancient tombs from Egypt. They were built to preserve the body, to extend life beyond death. So the tombs were actually built with this idea that it would extend their life beyond death. And so there is this effort in embalming the bodies and displaying artifacts informs today's knowledge of ancient Egypt. So because of these tombs and how they are doing research on them, they are allowed to have a glimpse of what it was like for these ancient Egyptians to live, especially for these ancient god kings. And we're looking at a type of temple that is engraved in a mountain here. And if you can imagine that back then in ancient Egypt, they had a very sophisticated sense of design, especially with the symmetry and these patterns, and how it's it's amazing how they were able to replicate their designs over and over again with ease. And we can't really see it from this perspective, but if you can imagine zooming in to this early step temple, you can see statues, and they're very tall. And this is the funerary temple of Queen Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut is one of the many famous queen pharaohs from ancient Egypt. And this was made in 1490 BCE. Again, those links are available. They should all be available on Canvas. Get to learn some of the info there. Some of the info on the quiz might be on there. So when it comes to these ancient Egyptian works of art, especially from these tombs, they're more commemorative than anything else. They're there to honor those who passed away. Something about ancient Egyptian style, they had this type of what they called a static style, where they used the same type of design for centuries. Something that is uncharacteristic of modern day, where things like style come and go very quickly. But back then, they would use one style and use it for centuries. Something about the way they would do their sculptures, they would do them in this fashion. They would make them very compact. They would be solidly structured figures that would embody qualities of strength and geometry. So they would purposely create them compact and solid to make it more more stronger, similar to architecture. And if we look at this early example of ancient Egyptian sculpture, you can probably guess just from the way the figures look that the man is a pharaoh. How can we tell? If we basically look at his attire, you can see that he's wearing the very famous cobra headdress. He has the the false beard. Those are quick indications that this person is probably a pharaoh. And something interesting about this piece in particular is that the man and the woman are the same height. So they're almost the same in terms of how tall they are. And what we know about ancient Egypt is that the king and the queen were looked at equally. They were equally exalted. It's not like other civilizations where they worship more the king or they worship more the queen. Instead, they were actually equal in ancient Egypt. When it comes to the portrayal of these pharaohs, something that you'll notice is this sense of idealization, that they look young, that they look very fit, very muscular. Um, and something about the ancient Egyptian style is that they are, again, compact. We are looking at two figures, but they are connected in the very center. They are made from just one solid material. You'll notice that the pharaoh is stepping forward with his left foot. That is a sign that this person is a pharaoh. If he was not in this position, it would mean that the figure portrayed is not exactly royalty or of the divine. Only pharaohs were allowed to pose in this manner. And this is King Menkaura and Queen Kamarnebti, made in 2490 BCE. So get to know those characteristics that make the pharaoh distinct. In other words, the cobra headdress, the false beard. You could probably recall the what the yes the cobra. And here is a mask from the mummy case of Tutankhamun. Some people, many people refer to him as King Tut. Something that makes this mask so precious is that it is one of the only tombs to have been that have remained intact until modern times. In other words, whenever there was a tomb, for the most part, a pharaoh's tomb, a lot of them were looted, a lot of them were robbed. So King Tut's one of the few tombs that was not exactly not as bothered in comparison to the others. You could say that one of the reasons why his was not his was not dug into was that he was actually a very famous, a very popular pharaoh. He had many admirers. Um, Something about this work in general, gold inlays. Again, the iconic cobra headdress worn only by pharaohs, the false beard, and also the eye makeup. Something that you'll notice about King Tut is that his head piece has two cobras on it. And so there was a time when there was a Upper Egypt and a Lower Egypt. And that's what those two cobras represent. So another piece from ancient Egypt. This is a wall painting or a wall drawing. Something that you'll notice with the figure is that it is in a different pose. It's actually he's standing up and that it looks like he's walking forward. His arms are outstretched. He appears to be grabbing the birds, and because of that, you can probably guess he was not a pharaoh. And you can tell he's not wearing the cobra headdress. But something that would happen in ancient Egypt is if there was someone that they wanted to commemorate, if there was someone very important in their community, they would paint them in walls, but they would always paint them in their activity or their role that they played in society. So this man here was probably a hunter of some sort. Something that you'll notice here is that the woman right next to him is a little bit smaller. In that, if you look underneath him, there's an even smaller person, and they're not even in the right scale. They look a lot smaller. Are the artists trying to portray some sort of depth? Maybe the person is far away. It doesn't exactly feel like that. Instead, what they do in ancient Egypt is they portray the people who are more important larger. And this is an example of what they call hierarchical design. Okay. And I might have gotten that term wrong. We'll see it in the next slide. So you'll see the ancient Egyptians portray themselves very differently depending on the role that they played in their communities. Yes, hierarchic scale. That is the that defines the size of humans relating to their importance. So the larger they are portrayed, the more important they were. If they were portrayed in a smaller scale, they are probably not as important as the figures who are large. This has hieroglyphics in the background, so they're ancient picture writing. And this is the wall painting from the tomb of Nebamun. I believe there's a link to this work in our module, so check it out